Welcome into the Source. Hey, we got the intro back. I wasn't expecting that. It's been so long without it that it kind of caught me off guard. Jack Pilgrim here with Spencer Smith, Sean Smith. He's going back to school for the first week of school for Fayette County Schools is this week, so kind of logistics issue, but he'll be back next week. But very excited to bring back Spencer Smith, man. It was a massive positive feedback, overwhelmingly positive feedback the last time we had you on. So Spencer, what's going on, buddy? Glad to have you back.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, there weren't any pitchforks or anything from what I could tell, so that was good. They didn't run me out of town, so happy to be back. Happy to talk to Cats. Big day in Kentucky land, at least for me. Today's Gerald Fitch's birthday.
Ooh.
He's turning 43 today, so he was a childhood hero of mine. The amount of time I spent pretending to be Gerald Fitch in the driveway is embarrassing, but today's his birthday, and he's actually he's a head coach. He's the head coach at Central Georgia Tech. A lot of people maybe have lost what some of those former players are doing, but he's a college head coach now. So yeah, happy birthday to him.
As Steven says, from Macon, Georgia. So shout out Gerald Fitch. As we were so rudely interrupted by the intro, this show is presented by Club Blue. Purchase one of 3 Club Blue bourbons, a portion of all sales supporting NIL efforts for UK student athletes. Club Blue Team White, Blue, and Ultra Premium bourbons are available for purchase now at Liquor Barn. Online at clubbluenil.com and in select bars and restaurants. So, Spencer, we wanted to bring you on as 8 weeks of Kentucky basketball summer workouts, practice, conditioning, all those fun things. They just came to a close. The team wrapped up on Thursday, August 7th. Some of them, practice ended, and an hour and a half later, they were already on their planes headed back home to all of their respective destinations. So I think there was a little bit of giddiness internally about getting back home and seeing family. I think the team will get 2 weeks to kind of regroup, refresh, and then I think they're coming back August 21st, I believe, and then the semester starts August 25th, and there we go. It's officially preseason basketball, and it's just crazy to think about. It feels like all these guys just moved into the dorm, and we just kind of got the welcome videos. Here's why I'm excited to help hang banner number 9 in Lexington, all those things. It's just very crazy that we're even at this point. But let's start just kind of big picture takeaways. What were you wanting to get out of the summer, Spencer, knowing these guys, learning these guys, versus kind of where we are today?
Yeah, I think it was an important time just because of all the turnover. Obviously, like in today's day and age with the transfer portal and NIL, like the summer is becoming more and more important than it ever has been, just because you've got to establish principles. You got to lay the groundwork so that when they come back in the fall, you can kind of cut right to it, and you don't need to, for lack of a better term, kind of waste time on a lot of the base stuff. So how it works in the summer, for anybody that doesn't know, you get 8 hours of what's called CARA, where it's countable athletic related activities, I think is what it stands for. But basically you can spend 8 hours a week with your guys, weight room, court, that type of stuff. So typically you split it up to about 2 hours a day. You do 4 days a week, and it's like a critical time to just really build out that fundamental stuff. I think that the team did a really good job. The other part of it too at Kentucky, because it's a little bit different at Kentucky, that's when you first introduce a lot of these guys to the fan base, right? So the fan base is like super hungry on Twitter and stuff, like, give me highlights, give me clips. I need more of, Jasper Johnson with the step back, and like they're so desperate for that stuff. So I think Kentucky did a good job with that this summer too. But sounds like all in all, it was a really successful summer. Now coming out of it, I can tell you in the coaching world, these next 2 weeks scare the living daylights out of a lot of coaches. Because, oh my gosh, yeah. Because when they're on campus, you kind of have a little bit of control, right? You're kind of in a hibernation pod a little bit, where you're kind of like, you're all together and you kind of have control over their days and what they do, and you're making sure they're taking care of their bodies and stuff. They go back home. What do they want to do? All their buddies are back home. They want to go back to the old high school. They want to play pickup. They want to hoop. They want to show off a new dunk they learned. So you're like, man, these next 2 weeks, just please don't hurt yourself. Please don't go play. Please don't go do anything. Just sit on the couch and don't move, and get some rest. That's what you want as a coach. And then you're just excited to get them back on campus and really get into it. Yeah.
It's kind of like, we saw the pictures of Jaden Quaintance dunking at the Dirt Bowl in Lexington and on concrete wearing slides. And we're like, no. Please, for all that is good in the world, don't do that. and that's under Kentucky's control in Lexington. So imagine what, kind of the real concern is over the next couple of weeks. But on that note, I've heard that Jaden is only going to be out for a week because he's coming back early to begin the ramp up process for his recovery. Apparently things are going just unbelievably well. And they're going to now kind of transition into the running and all the other fun stuff that comes with the kind of inching closer and closer toward actual availability. So shout out Jaden Quaintance. Please don't dunk in slides on concrete anymore if you're coming back next week. So hold your horses. We'll take good care of you and get you back on the floor, hopefully sooner rather than later. So we're going to, I'm posting on KSR tonight, kind of my 8 takeaways based on my intel, talking to numerous people around the program and kind of getting their thoughts and you kind of off the record anonymous quotes and things like that of this guy's looking good. We need to see more out of this guy. This guy kind of turned heads. He's been a major surprise. He's been a major improvement from what we saw last season, those sorts of things. So I have kind of 8 takeaways. We'll kind of chunk this and kind of get your thoughts on those based on what you've heard, because this is Sources Say, and you do have your own sources being in the coaching world, so we appreciate that. So let's run through a couple of these and get your takes on it. Otega Oweh is Otega Oweh, but better. I've heard amazing things about him. I think he's really just kind of taken on this leadership. I think there were some concerns about coasting on occasion and just kind of knowing the stage of where he was in the summer. It's like, hey, I've been there, done that. I'm just kind of here for conditioning and just kind of punting to the fall, but has really just kind of taken an accountability and trying to be a leader with his teammates and showing them the ropes and taking guys under his wing. So I've heard awesome things about Otega. You know him, you love him, you know exactly what to expect. Point guard spot is in great hands with Jalen Lowe. I've heard great things about him. 1A, 1B with Otega, if you ask me, in terms of just what his production is looking like, a level of trust and comfort with the ball in his hands. So great things there. Denzel Aberdeen and Mo Diabate are as advertised. I think they're more high floor guys, maybe not going to be game-changing superstars necessarily, Spencer, but guys that you have massive sample size. We've seen them. You know exactly what they're going to bring to the table as Final Four players in the SEC. So they've both been as advertised. Trent Noah is the best shooter on the team. I'm sure you've heard something similar to that. I've heard great things about him, just kind of having that level of confidence, kind of stepping into that Kobe Brea. When the ball touches his hands, you just kind of expect good things to happen. Colin Chandler got a little banged up, but of the time he was on the floor, really picked up where he left off, as ending the season just in a really, really positive fashion. So if we want to end there and kind of just get your takes on some of the complimentary info, whatever you've heard about those guys.
Yeah, I mean, the stuff on Ortega is spot on. I think he's a legitimate All-American candidate. Whether he could be like a National Player of the Year, remains to be seen. If he takes another jump like he did last year, the ceiling for him is really, really high. But he's just going to be that stalwart. I think 33 out of 36 games, right? He scored in double figures. Went all the way into mid-February, I think, before he scored in single figures, which is nuts.
And Mo Diabate, the reason why that streak ended.
Yeah, which we'll talk about him in a minute because I'm so pumped about him. And yeah, I think having that consistency, having that senior veteran, having the guy who's been with Pope now for a year can really take some of these other guys, even the older guys, even a guy like Aberdeen, but he's new to Pope's system, right? So he needs a guy like Oweh to maybe tell him the right reads. And it's important for guys to hear from other people other than the coaching staff. That's really important. If a team's going to round a corner and really become something special, you need to be player led. You can't be coach led. And Oweh is going to kind of be the core of that. I think he's got to really take that on. And it sounds like the summer he really has, which is great. Jalen Lowe, I'm a big fan of him. I think everything I've heard this summer he's been special. And even La Familia came out and was like, this kid is the real deal, which is great. I look at Jalen Lowe. I'll give you a weird analogy, and you can tell me if I'm a crazy person. But I look at Jalen Lowe, and there's an old saying in baseball where it's like you've got two players who both run to first base equally fast, but one has perfect form, the other one has lousy form. Which one do you want? And immediately right off the cuff, people might want to be like, oh, the guy with perfect form. That sounds good. But really, you want the guy with lousy form, because if he's already making it to first base as quickly as the guy with perfect form, and then you teach him the right form, imagine how quickly he's going to make it to first base now, right? Imagine that output. And I look at Jalen Lowe a little bit like that because I look at the output. I'm like, I look at how fast he made it to first base last year with his numbers and being an all conference guy in the ACC. And then I also look at how inefficient he was. I'm like, if you just teach him the right form, if you just teach him to be slightly more efficient, imagine the output that you could probably get from a guy like that. And we've seen Pope do that at BYU and also with Lamont Butler and stuff. So kind of a quirky analogy, but that's how I view it. When you look for guys in the transfer portal, sometimes you want to look at the guys you want to kind of weigh output, but also like, do they have some quirks and flaws that are like kind of fixable that can like lift that ceiling up even more? And I think Jalen Lowe is kind of one of those guys. So I'm super, super pumped about him. We need Aberdeen and Mo Diabate to also kind of be stalwarts, guys that have both played in the Final Four. One of them's won a national title. Defensively, we need those guys to lead the way. Defensively, I think is where both of those guys could disrupt like a lot of what the other team does, especially Jack. I think you were reporting on it last week, maybe, but talking about how Diabate was guarding Andrew Harrison on the perimeter in the scrimmage and stuff like that. Like his ability to do that is like, there's not many guys in the country that can do it at a really high level. And Diabate is one of them, which is really cool. He's the hammer, not the nail, which I think we talked about a few weeks ago. Colin Chandler is going to be Colin Chandler. He's going to be great. If we get February, March Colin Chandler, he's going to be really hard to keep off the floor. And then to wrap it up with Trent Noah, the thing that I've heard about Trent Noah more than anything is he's just always in the right spot. Like for some reason, I don't know, some guys have a nose for it, some guys don't, but like a guy drives and it just seems like Noah is always right in that window, right where he can kind of get that kick out for an open three. So he gets himself open looks just as much as other guys get open looks for him because of how he moves without the ball. Reed Shepherd was kind of similar, right? So I'm really impressed with him. And that's not just shooting, it's also rebounding. Like he's always in the right spot and can affect things on the rebounding and on the glass and stuff too. So a lot of really positive stuff. I've heard a lot of the same stuff that you've kind of reported on, Jack. So it's looking promising on that end.
Yeah, I think Trent is a guy that in a vacuum, he would probably not play given just the measurables, given the, 3-star, like he just kind of feels like a guy who would live in your 11, 12, 13 spot, just in a traditional sense. But it just kind of feels like the more we see out of him and hear out of him and the things that he did in the minutes that he got last season, but especially just the way he's kind of taken ownership of, a new veteran role. And I've heard good things about just kind of how he's stepping up and just this vocal, manner and has this presence to him, this confident presence to him where he just keeps kind of turning coaches' heads and saying like, man, it's going to be really hard to keep him off the floor because, like you said, he just does all the little things and finds himself in the right place at the right time, has that nose for the basketball on the glass, diving for loose balls, getting his body where it needs to be. He was challenged by Pope in that regard. Hey, we got it. If you're going to play, we got to get your conditioning right. We got to get you, bulked up, hulked up. And he's just kind of answered the bell on everything up to this point. And, I probably wouldn't be playing in a traditional sense, given the other stuff. But I think because of all the other stuff, I think he might be second player off the bench, third player off the bench. I mean, eighth man, seventh man, something like that. I mean, he's going to be in the rotation, and it's going to be really hard for Pope to keep him off the floor, I think, Spencer.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you look at it, Noah and Chandler in particular are going to kind of like, I think last week you guys talked a little bit about a couple guys who just like went out there and just won us a couple games, right? And I think both of those guys 100% are going to come on and just win us games off the bench. And it's like, when you look at the course of a 40-game season, the amount of guys that you have on the bench who can at any point come in and like be a difference maker is like, that really comes in handy when you're on the road at Mississippi State in, early February, and somebody can come in and hit back-to-back big threes or something like that. It's just like, that's the kind of stuff that can sometimes be the difference between going, 36-4 or 31-9, right? Is how many of those weapons do you have that can come off the bench and really make an impact, as opposed to just they're coming off the bench and you're just hoping that the other team doesn't go on a big run because you're kind of soft at those positions. So both of those guys, I think, I'm looking to see a big impact from. Both of them have flaws in different areas. I think Noah, I've heard defensively probably needs a little bit more work. So obviously we know Chandler's a great defender. I think he's only going to get better, which is really good. So, but Chandler needs to be a little bit maybe more consistent in maybe not turning the ball over and stuff like that. Like Trent Noah is really smart. He doesn't cost us a ton of possessions because he usually makes the right play, doesn't turn it over. Chandler, I think, can sometimes be a little bit more prone to turnovers and stuff. So they still have little things that they can fix here and there, but they are absolute weapons to have coming off the bench. And you're right, 7th, 8th man. That's a pretty good spot to be in. Yeah.
So I'd say that those kind of upper takeaways are more of the positive things that we've heard, and not to say the rest are going to be negatives, but just kind of this is where we start trending toward we still need to see the jury still out as we get back to the fall semester and kind of start these preseason workouts. So there's a grouping of wings, in my opinion, Jasper Johnson, Cam Williams, Braden Hawthorne, that have done really, really fun things and exciting things and have had moments, Braden Hawthorne punching it on, defender where you go, whoa, where the hell did that come from? And Cam Williams stepping up and just kind of catching fire from 3. And Jasper Johnson, I mean, he has that OTE. He can go for 40 on any given night, kind of Rob Dillingham level of just microwave scoring. Those 3 I've also heard, very real kind of, I don't even say toughness, but just kind of the physicality and an adjustment period of trying to figure themselves out and getting things to click from that perspective. That they, I think some of the Mo Diabates and the Otega Owes and Denzel Aberdeen, I think, have challenged those 3 in particular, knowing that that's kind of where you get them at their weakest moments when you approach, try to big brother them. I think that's when you see them kind of take the bad shots and the turnovers start to creep in. So finding that balance of, man, if we can get just the raw ability to shine through and kind of be able to handle the bumps and add muscle and, continue to take this, weight regimen seriously. All 3 of those guys, to varying levels of how quickly it's going to happen, are going to be stars at some point. I just don't know how quickly it's going to take. I think Kentucky needs Jasper and Cam to be immediate impact guys sooner rather than later. Braden Hawthorne, I think, is kind of a year away from being a year away, but all of those guys, I think, are right there in the mix and are going to be doing some special things in Kentucky uniforms at some point. We just kind of still wait there. Brandon Garrison is the fascinating one, I think, Spencer, because I think if you're looking for the good news, we've seen Brandon Garrison in a Kentucky uniform. We've seen him in the SEC. You know exactly what he brings to the table, the good, the bad, the ugly. And we know that player can produce in the SEC. That guy can help you win games, and that's a really, really great thing. But then it kind of comes to the plan was a 2-year plan, learn under Amari Williams, learn the ropes, and then kind of take off in year 2 in a Kentucky uniform. And that jump just has not happened quite yet. My understanding, maybe you've heard differently, but that I think is something that the staff is kind of playing wait and see on. And that kind of ties into my last takeaway of Malachi Moreno closing the gap at the 5. Like, I think he's been just a really safe, comfortable option for them where he takes up space, just does kind of the right savvy things. You have no idea that he's an incoming freshman and a teenager, does the little things, boxes out, alter shots at the rim, catches lobs, sets good, hard screens and just helps initiate the offense, doing some Amari Williams things in that regard. Just a really strong safety net for them, while I think kind of the more extreme guy with the higher highs but also lower lows is Brandon Garrison. I think that dynamic is going to be one that's going to be absolutely fascinating this fall, especially as we wait for Jaden Quainton. So however angle you want to take there, Spencer.
Yeah. So when I look at a guy like Jasper, for instance, and so I'm Jasper. I'm 18, 19. I am coming out of OTE. I've never played at this level before. And I come on in campus in the summer. And every time I step on the practice floor, I'm being guarded by either Otega Owe, Denzel Aberdeen, Cam Williams, right? Chandler. Like if I'm being guarded by one of those guys every time I'm on the court, there's going to be an adjustment that has to be made from a physicality standpoint, from just learning to make the right play, learning not to force stuff. I'm not super worried about Jasper because honestly, a lot of what I've heard has actually been pretty positive. And I think I came on about a month ago, and I think Jasper was firmly in a little bit more of a question mark bucket for me. I'm a little bit more on solid ground with Jasper, where I'm like, I can see a path where this kid makes
great
real impact. I think It's a great problem to have, and we always joke, and we joked in the past, like, oh, practices should be harder than games or whatever. But if you're Jasper Johnson and every time you step on the floor for a drill, you're guarded by one of those 4 guys, it's going to be tough, right? But I think as the summer's gone on, I think he's become more and more comfortable, and I think he's making the right play, and I think he's learning not to force things. This is just from what I'm hearing, and all of that's really good. So then I'm like, okay, add another 3 months to that, and then give him some run against, Eastern Illinois and some schools like that, and then give him another couple months into SEC play. I think Jasper could be in a place by, SEC play where he's making a real impact, which is great. Cam Williams, obviously, like you've joked around about it, the NBA draft.net top 10, whatever. That was nonsense.
Bless their hearts.
Yeah, that was nonsense. And like people don't know the difference, between some of those sites. But Cam's had a decent summer. I think he's good at picking his spots. He doesn't force bad shots, which is good. Some guys just hunt shots and you're like, oh, he's going to take some bad ones. You're like, oh, he's going to do some heat checks and stuff like that. That's not Cam Williams. I think Cam Williams is pretty surgical with when he does take when he does take a look, and it's usually a good one. I think Cam needs to figure out maybe how to impact the game a little bit more and not just like rely on being able to hit that 3, but also like, can we get a little bit off the bounce? Can you create a little bit for others? Can you dribble in 2 feet in the paint, kick it out, relocate out to the wing, and the defense is scrambling, and all of a sudden you get a good look because you were the one who originally drove it. I think that there's some stuff with Cam that probably needs to happen there. It's a little bit easier in the American, and I was in the American at South Florida for 4 or 5 years. It's a decent league, but it's not the SEC, right? So adjustment period there, but I'm not too worried about Cam. I think Cam's going to have a big role. I think he's going to do what we need him to do as far as making shots, stretching the floor. Actually, Jack, I think when I was on last, I think we went an hour and 20 minutes, and I don't even think we mentioned Cam. And that's probably my fault because he slipped my mind. But I just think like this team is so deep that he just needs to carve out a really good role for himself, and he needs to do some little things, and he needs to be able to knock down shots. And I think he's going to do that. I'm not super worried about Cam. Braden, I don't see a path for him to play. His upside's really high, but I'm kind of with you if that's kind of what you're getting at, which is I think he's going to make a big impact at some point at Kentucky. I think Pope called him a young Tayshaun Prince, and that's my favorite player of all time. My favorite UK player is Tayshaun Prince. If he ends up being that, it's like, whoa, look out. He's certainly got the length and some of the tools and the skill set and stuff, but I just don't really see a path for him right now. But hey, a lot can change. We've got 3 months until we take the floor to kind of kick off the regular season. With Brandon Garrison, I've heard a lot of the same. It's mixed reports. It's really high highs. It's really low lows. I think the high highs are what you'd expect, right? It's him running the floor. It's him being like an Energizer bunny where he's like making these energy effort plays and he's making things happen. He's talking some trash to La Familia. He's doing things that like you would expect and maybe hope a guy like Brandon Garrison can do, which is really good. I just don't know if he's found the consistency of like, can we dump it to you in the paint and expect you to go and make a play for us? Whether that's a play at the rim, whether that's I'm going to hit this guy on the back door. Like Amari had a lot of that to his game. And I don't know if Brandon's quite gotten there. My thing with Brandon is, I think from what I've heard, maybe sometimes he tries to, he's a senior or he's an older guy. He's a senior on this team because he's older. He's going into his 3rd year of Power 5 basketball. And I think sometimes he feels like, oh, I should be able to make this play. So I have to, I've got to go do it. When sometimes it's better to just play the game naturally and just keep the ball moving and keep relocating and keep doing things like that and be hard to guard. As Jimmy Dykes would say. And then some of that stuff just kind of naturally happens. Like Oscar was a guy in his first year. Oscar didn't always know what to do with the ball, but he made quick decisions. He would get it back out. He would relocate. He was constantly moving, and the ball just kind of would naturally come to him. And I'm not saying Brandon can ever be Oscar or vice versa. They're just different players. But I just think like when you play like that and you're kind of always looking for like, hey, what can I do? And I'll make the simple play and this and that. Sometimes that lends itself to then making a big play later on in the possession. So I think a little bit more of that is needed from Brandon. And then it kind of leads us into Malachi. I've heard Malachi's had a great summer. I've heard Malachi's been like, and I had no expectations for Malachi only because he was an unknown quantity to me. So it's like if he comes in and he contributes, amazing. If he doesn't, no big deal. He's only a freshman. So I didn't have any weight on his shoulders at the beginning of the summer, but everything I've heard is like he eats up space. He alters so many shots defensively. He is like a force down there. Like people can't back him down. He rebounds the ball really efficiently. He doesn't make bad plays. So he's not a guy who's going to wow you, but he's also at this point in his career, but he's also not a guy who's going to cost you a bunch of possessions and stuff. And in fact, he's going to make the right play more often than not, which is just great. Like Malachi's a guy who I think has grown maybe the most in the summer, at least from what I thought of him early on to what you look at and what you hear about now. Like I'm like Malachi has probably made the biggest jump, at least in my mind, out of any of those guys, which is pretty impressive.
Do you think, knowing Pope for, you've coached against him, scouted against him way back when, saw him coach at Kentucky this past season, knowing what you know about Pope, do you envision kind of the safe bet versus the high risk, high reward kind of balance where there is a path to Malachi being the guy alongside Jaden Quaintance? Or do you think it's going to be a, kind of still BG's team until further notice? Until Quaintance comes back, obviously.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think it's got to be, in my opinion, right? And I'm, in my opinion, which isn't worth much, but in my opinion, it's still got to be BG's job to lose because he has produced at that level. He has given us double-figure games in the SEC. He has made, great plays, and he's kind of been in that environment. So going into the year, I think it's still got to be BG's, role to lose. But I think the option for Malachi, him moving closer and closer to the scorer's table to check in is going to maybe be a little bit more of a real thing up until when Quaintance comes back. But I do think, and Pope's a big energy guy. He's a big positivity guy. He's going to want to make sure he's trying to instill a lot of confidence into BG. Like if BG's kind of having some ups and downs, I think Pope's going to really want to focus in on the ups. And I worked for a guy, Lon Kruger, at Oklahoma who was like that. Like Coach Kruger was like big on like, if a guy's feeling ups and downs, let's really focus on the ups so that we give him that confidence and he can kind of play through some of the downs and then just learn he doesn't have to force it. They don't have to be, highs on every single possession. Sometimes it's okay to just, again, make the simple play. So I think Pope will kind of take it like that, but I do think it'll be BG's job to a point to lose up until JQ maybe comes back or until maybe Malachi just decides to come in and take it, which is always a possibility. You never know.
I think it's just fascinating in the portal era, especially where it does kind of feel like this is BG's last ride, no matter what. Like just, with the 2-year plan discussion and with the speculation behind the scenes that other schools were kind of tampering and wanting to get in on the BG experience. And maybe some people around BG had an open ear before he did decide to ultimately come back. Like he just did kind of have that vibe of, if it doesn't work out this year, he's out. While also you have a lot invested in Malachi for hopefully being a multi-year player. But there's also something to be said that you kind of hope he isn't, because if he's a 1-year, one and done going to the NBA, something went really, 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 really right this season. How do you balance the kind of playing for next year as well for either of them potentially being, what happens if you do ride the BG wave too long, you piss off Malachi and then he goes portaling and then you're kind of left, with neither of them next season? How do you kind of balance that?
You have to at any point do right by the program and right by the guys in that room. And that room feels small in the middle of the season when you're in mid-February and, I don't know, you've lost 2 of your last 3 or something. Like that room feels small. There's only 30 something guys maybe total in that whole program between all the staff and the managers and the players and stuff. And as a head coach, I think, and as a coaching staff in general and the guys advising Pope, you've just got to do right by the guys in that room overall. And what you don't want is if a guy's not playing well and the head coach just keeps playing him anyways, other guys on the team start to look at themselves and they're like, man, like player B is kind of busting his tail every day. He's making plays. He's doing good stuff. Like, why isn't coach playing him more? And what that does is it tends to just disrupt elsewhere, not just at that one position or that one position group, which is probably not what you want. So I trust Pope to make the right decision for Kentucky and for the program overall. And again, it sounds like maybe we're being really negative on BG. Like
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I still think BG has like a really special ability to make things happen. I think he's still got a place for sure. He could come out in November and just wow everybody and just make all sorts of crazy plays and stuff, which would be incredible. I think this maybe more speaks to the growth of Malachi than anything else. But I think at the end of the day, Pope's just got to look at his staff and say, what's right by our guys, what's right by our group. And if it's player A needing to sit more, like I'll handle that as the head coach. And usually at every stop I've been at as well, players will have like a guy, usually the guy that recruited them, right? So like whatever assistant coach recruited him the most, that'll kind of be who they're assigned to. So if a guy like Malachi or BG or somebody's upset, it's kind of on that assistant coach as well. Like him and the head coach would kind of tag team that situation together and try to smooth it over and try to make sure that we're putting our best foot forward and stuff. So I trust the staff implicitly. I know they're going to make the right decision, but at the end of the day, you just got to look at that group of 30 guys in the program and you got to be like, what's the best thing for all of us? And I think Pope will do that.
Yeah, and I think that is the best point. Is I haven't heard a single negative thing this summer about any of these guys, and I think that's a testament to how good this team is. I do think you kind of have to get nitpicky when we are talking about a team that, in my opinion, can win a national championship, where if you can't just say all 14 guys are, NBA superstars, or else, then it kind of goes in one year and out the other. You have to separate a Trent Noah for busting his tail and earning the minutes that he's going to get. And you have to kind of single out hey, these were the expectations for BG going into the year. He hasn't quite met them, but there's still a long runway. Like I go back to some of the conversations I had last year about Ortega. He left last summer as kind of in that group of the, Cam Williams, Jasper Johnson, even maybe a Brandon Garrison, where solid player, a guy that they trust to do some things, but maybe not what they were hoping when they signed him, and then had a breakthrough in September, October that was just like, whoa, where did this guy come from? And he becomes the best player on the team. They said that. We did not expect him to be the best player on the team. And then going into the regular season, they said, well, I guess this is Ortega's team. So you do have a long runway to work with. We just kind of have to, nitpick at some point because this team is really good. I can say with absolute confidence, and I'm sure you can say something similar, that Kentucky's going to be good. They're going to be in the conversation all year long. They're going to be ranked all year long. There is nothing that is concerning me to the point of going, I just don't see it with this. And again, that does include Andrei Yelovich coming over and adapting well and all those things working out. And Jaden Quaintance needs to play. I do think all of it does kind of tie in with him being the guy that, we need him to be and playing in a timely manner. So if those two things happen the way we expect them to, I think everything else is going to sort itself out. So this is just having something to talk about and coming out of the summer with good, bad, and ugly. Nothing bad or nothing like overly negative of, hey, these are actually damning things going into the season. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 1,000%. And honestly, like players get better as you polish. And like right now, this product that Pope has is not polished, right? We're just spending the summer putting in principles. So we're working on actions, but we're not working on full sets, right? And we're working on reads, but we're not full on like, hey, this is the finished product. And when we go out on January 6th against Florida or whatever, this is like the reads and the plays we want to make. We're not quite there yet. Guys get better as some of that stuff gets worked out, especially a guy like BG who, like if BG is always trying to make a certain play or whatever, but he's going into a game with a game plan and he knows, hey, when we run this, I'm looking to go up over my right shoulder, put it at the top of the corner, and boom, it's going to be there for me because I know I've run off of this pick from Andrei Yelovich 100 times, and I know he's going to clip the guy just long enough for me to get that off. The timing and the rhythm and that kind of stuff, none of that's there in the summer. So guys end up looking a lot better and a lot cleaner, and I think that's part of maybe what happened with Owe, which is as principles and foundations turned into sets and, hey, reads, and this is what we actually want to do out of this action, guys start to put it together, and they start to get their timing down and stuff. And so there's so long to go until we take the floor. It's too long, in my opinion. I'm like itching for it to be here already, but there's a long way to go. And a guy like BG benefits from that type of stuff. And so the deeper we get into the fall, the better and better he'll probably look as he gets more comfortable with that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So transitioning out of just the takeaways in general, let's throw out some superlatives. I think that'd be pretty fun. If we want to go MVP, most improved, biggest surprise, and biggest question mark, if you want to run through some of those. Let's start with MVP based on what you've heard. Who would you say won the summer for the Cats?
I'll give it to Jalen Lowe just because
I like that.
Yeah, I think he was a question mark coming in. I think he was our first portal addition, if I remember correctly.
Cam started it
right
the day that Kentucky lost Tennessee, and then there was the absolute panic after the Donovan Dent stuff, and then it kind of led to the first major domino to fall being Jalen Lowe.
That's right. I was sweeping my back porch at the time, and I got the notification. It might have been you, Jack. I don't know who tweeted it. Somebody tweeted it, and I was like, I immediately just went and started watching highlights of the kid. And yeah, I think he definitely is my MVP just because he's really solidified himself, not only publicly and with us, but it sounds like with his teammates and stuff. I think they have full faith in him that he's going to make the right reads and that he's doing a bunch of stuff that's making them better. He's making the team around him better. So from an MVP standpoint, I give it to Jalen Lowe for sure.
I think I'm going to go. I think it probably Otega Owe, just, and it's a cop-out answer and I hate it, but I do think that there's something to be said about entering this summer and trying to figure out how to take his game to the next level when you have those conversations with the NBA scouts and they kind of give you a blueprint. Hey, if you want to be on our radar as a legitimate first-round draft pick next season, here's what you have to do. And I have heard that he has responded to a lot of those things, and there's this comfortability of getting his spots and lifting for pull-ups and off-dribble stuff and you know, really building confidence beyond just the kind of barrel downhill and finish around the rim player that he was last season, hitting a shot or two on occasion, but he's really expanding his game and just kind of having an ebb and flow with it. That's been really, really impressive. So I think it's cop-out answer, but I do think that I can go with Otega and feel like that's a winning answer. Let's go most improved.
We talked about him a little ad nauseum earlier, but I would probably give it to Trent Noah. I just think he's the guy, not only from a standpoint of like the impact on the court, but also you touched on it, but like, I think he's turning into a leader. I think he's helping guys. He's only a sophomore, which is nuts. But like, I just think he feels completely comfortable right now in his role and what he was wanting to provide. You've got Jalen Lowe calling him the best shooter that he's ever seen and things like that. Like, I just think his confidence coming out of the summer has to be really high. And from a guy who we felt like only played because of injuries and stuff. And he made big impacts in both the Tennessee games and elsewhere. He had a big three in that opening round game in the NCAA tournament that I remember I was just kind of feeling like iffy. And I was like, oh my gosh, let's not make this like a St. Peter, like where this goes until the end and I'm worried about it or whatever. Like, let's please pull away. I think Trent Noah hit a big corner or a big three in the corner, if I remember correctly. And that like kind of sparked one of our runs. And he had big moments last year, which is great. But I just think coming out of the summer, he's probably feeling way more confident. I think he's had a big impact. Honestly, if it hadn't been for Colin Chandler's injury, I might have given it to him, because I heard great things about him leading up to the little tweak. And then obviously he was kind of easing his way back in at the very end. So maybe if not for that, maybe Colin Chandler would have been in that spot, but I'll give it to Trent Noah.
I like that. I probably would have done the same for Colin Chandler. I'm expecting a massive year for Colin, so it kind of went hand in hand there, but circumstances probably don't allow that because he was just very limited. Different answer. I'm going with Malachi because I think he had a lot to prove, dominated a weak high school, for what he was ranked as a top 25 kid nationally. You just kind of have that target on your back when you don't go the prep route, when you don't try to go take the smoke, going, Geico Nationals and things like that. When you stay local, you do kind of have, are you that guy at the McDonald's game, at the Nike Hoop Summit, and, didn't necessarily go to either of those events and just, light the world on fire, goes to USA U19s, me being there, watching every minute of his reps. I thought he was the best big there, not named Morez Johnson. I thought he was absolutely tremendous. Took his game, I've seen him 100 times, took his game to another level while he was there. And just the way he kind of built upon that and really is finding his groove of, as you said, just a really, really strong summer from start to finish, to the point where we can have a conversation where there's a junior Brandon Garrison who is, scored in double figures in the SEC and has taken games over and done things where we're even having the discussion of him potentially nipping at his heels and taking his minutes. I think that's a pretty special thing. So I'm going with Malachi. He's had a really, really, really bright summer. Let's go biggest surprise of the summer, Spencer.
Well, yeah, you kind of just took my talking point. I'm probably thinking I'm going to give that to Malachi.
Fair.
For all the things you just said. Because again, I came into the summer with him with no expectations, not in a bad way. Just like I have no idea what to expect from Malachi. He could be great. He could be a multi-year project. Who knows? So I'm not going to put any weight on his shoulders in my mind. And he is just totally outclassed everything that I would have probably imagined coming out of the summer, which is good. Another big surprise. If I was going to put another one into it, I've heard really good things about Aberdeen, and I know, hey, he came in with kind of high notoriety and stuff, and he won a national championship and all that stuff, which is great. And so I already had kind of an expectation of what to expect. But from what I've heard, I think he's making plays that I didn't even maybe really expect him to make, and I think he's making some good reads. He's getting a lot of minutes in practice at the point guard spot, which again, he didn't get to run a ton a year ago because, he backed up arguably the best point guard in college basketball. So even when he was on the floor, he was on the floor with him quite a bit. And so he wasn't really being that primary ball handler, and he wasn't making reads and stuff. And everything I've heard this summer is he's been great in that role. And he's been really, really a really good kind of second option to Jalen Lowe in that position. And then when you move him off the ball, he's been really good as well. So I think the positives coming out of him being a ball handler, being a guy who's going to set other guys up and make the right read and even make great plays for himself, I think a lot of that's been really positive. So I'll give the consolation prize to Denzel Aberdeen.
I think Jalen Lowe is my biggest surprise just because I liked him out of the portal, didn't love him. I thought, lightning can't strike twice the way the efficiency just magically followed with Lamont Butler. I remember the day that he signed. I remember his magical NCAA tournament runs, but I remember just going, how is Lamont a fit? Like, I just don't see this, the video game offense that you see with Pope. How is Lamont Butler going to fit? And then he has the season that he does and shoots it, career best tenfold. And it's easy to just kind of put two and two together and say, well, all players can do that. And Jalen Lowe is going to go from being, horrible efficiency, turnover prone, taking horrible shots and all those things, and then just magically get it fixed. It kind of just felt like fool's gold. And I was like, okay, I just need to see it to believe it, hear it to believe it. And just the way that he's taken ownership of like nipping at Otega's heels as a 1A, 1B instead of Otega just far and away the guy and everybody else is kind of just fighting for second place. I do think Jalen has been right there with Otega as the best player on the floor. And if I'm going from what I expected when he signed versus where he is and what I've heard where he is leaving the summer, I think he can be an all SEC type of player. And I was certainly not expecting that. So I think he's definitely belonging in that conversation. Go biggest question mark for you leaving the summer, Spencer.
So we've talked a lot about BG, so I'm not going to go with BG, although I do think, there's some question marks at that spot. But I think for me, I'll kind of come back to Cam Williams. Not a question mark as in can he have an impact, but more a question mark on where does that role end up settling in? What rotations is he going to be the best with? What types of sets and how is Pope and company going to use him? Because I think there's a lot of ways you could use him. Also defensively, we know he's 6'8", 6'9", however big he is. He's kind of he's known as a pretty solid defender. Everything I watched from him at Tulane, he was a great defender. So where does that end up settling in when you're in the dog days of January and February? Where does Cam Williams fit into the rotation, and who does he play best with, and what types of lineups does he kind of fit in with? I think that's a question mark for me going forward. He's absolutely going to be part of the picture. He's going to have a good impact for this team. He was a great addition. I think his upside's really high, but where exactly is that upside going to be felt the most? That's what I'm maybe most curious to see. And so again, you kind of touched on it. A lot of really good stuff coming out of Cam, like as far as the reports go from practice and stuff, but also maybe some question marks on exactly where he fits. So I'll give it to Cam Williams.
Yeah, it's a loaded, I think it's more of a testament to the competition and how good the other pieces are where he's trying to fit in more so than, anything he's doing wrong necessarily. So yeah, I feel you there. Biggest question mark for me, I touched on it. I think BG just, can he be that guy? And if he can't be that guy, what does that mean for everything else? Is Malachi ready to truly take ownership of that role? Is Jaden Quain's going to be healthy enough? Is he going to be the superstar, potential top 5 pick that he wants to be? The staff thinks he can be, all those things. Just kind of, if BG isn't, the surefire thing at the 5, you kind of need some other things to fall into place in right order, or else you could start seeing some issues in the front court. Or you just got to get creative and throw Yelovich at the 5 and go small ball, have Mo Diabate kind of anchor things at the 4. We've seen him Pope throw some creative lineups out there that had Mo at the 5, and I don't think that's necessarily sustainable. I think it's more of a band-aid option instead of an actual foundational fix. So I think they need BG to figure things out, and if not, then we do kind of have to pivot to, all right, Malachi, keys are yours. It's your time to shine. Or, all right, JQ, we need you in mid-November, early December. You have the keys. Take them. What are you going to do with it? So I think BG just kind of, we're still in wait and see mode with him, and hopefully he gets things figured out and we get the consistency that the staff is really looking for. Let's go best shooting lineup based on what you've heard and your breakdowns and analysis and those things.
Yeah, so I'll kind of tie this in with best shooting lineup, because my other option for biggest question mark would have been Yelovich, and I'm pretty bummed that he couldn't make it to campus, as I'm sure most Kentucky fans are, because they want to hear about him and stuff. I also just think European guys need longer to settle in and adjust to the speed and the physicality and everything, as we saw or the diet, as we saw with Big Z. Getting them to eat chicken wings and stuff and not throw.
Shout out Indies.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it as well. So I'm a bit bummed. And so if I was going to do a 1B on the question mark, it'd be him. But it makes me think of it, because when we look at best shooting lineups, I think it probably has to include him, just because I think from what I've heard and from the little bit that I've seen, I think he's going to be a pretty dynamic shooter. I think he's going to be a guy who can stretch the floor. He's not going to be Kyle Wiltshire or anything, but he's, can he be, I don't know, like a 36, 37, 38% 3-point shooter?
Like a really Derek Willis ish.
Derek Willis would be great if he could be a Derek Willis. 100%. Like somebody like that would be excellent if he could provide that type of a stopgap at that position. So
not La Familia, Nate Sestina, just what we actually got with Nate Sestina.
Yeah, 100%. I was bummed that he wasn't part of La Familia this year. I was bummed, but Nate Sestina is a great example, because he came off the bench. He played. I think Yelovich will play more minutes probably than Sestina played, but Sestina was a great compliment on that team to the athleticism of like EJ Montgomery and stuff. So I think you could see a similar type of impact. So I think when you're looking at the best shooting lineup, I'm still going to put Jalen Lowe at the 1, because at the end of the day, somebody's got to create that, and somebody's got to be the straw that stirs the drinks, and you got to get it out in transition and stuff. So I'm going to leave Jalen Lowe at the 1, even though he's maybe not the best shooting option there. I'll put probably Jasper Johnson at the 2. No, that's tough. This is a tough one, Jack. Because I want to find a way to get Trent Noah on the floor. I want to find a way to get Cam Williams on the floor. So we're going to go a small ball lineup. We're going to go Yelovich at the 5, Cam Williams at the 4. We'll go Trent Noah at the 3. We'll go Jasper at the 2.
Over Colin?
Yeah. See, this is a good problem.
Do you trust Colin enough to stir the drink the way Jalen would? Because he's an upgrade at shooting wise. Do you trust him as the lead guard?
You definitely have a drop off. You'd have a pretty severe drop off, I think, in shot creation if you were relying on that. I could put Colin in there. Colin and Jasper are going to be 1A and 1B probably for that last spot. I think you could put either one. So it probably depends on the day who's shooting the ball a little bit better. But yeah, you could put Colin in that too. But I would leave Jalen Lowe at the 1, because you got to have the shot creation for sure.
Yeah, you'll take that lineup. I'll take Colin at the 1. See what happens. He's not the deer in the headlights guy that we saw down in Nashville at Vandy. We're talking the guy who's throwing moon balls up at 40 feet in the NCAA tournament. So we're going Colin. We're going Jasper, Trent, Cam, and Yelovich. I think that's the 5. Let's go best defensive lineup.
Yeah, I'm going to take Jalen Lowe off the floor for this one. I'll put Aberdeen at the 1, because I think he's pretty dynamic. I will put Colin Chandler for sure. I'll put him at the 2 in that spot. I'll put Owe at the 3. I'll put Mo Diabate at the 4 and JQ at the 5. I think that's got to be it. That is a stellar defensive lineup. That's a lineup that last year's Kentucky team could not have scored on. I don't think that is a killer defensive lineup, which is great.
I don't think there are any other hot takey answers to that. That is the 5. Yeah, those are 5 just absolutely insane defenders. Do you see that happening? Like, I feel like that's a real lineup. I don't think the all shooting lineup is realistic, but I think that all defensive lineup, I think we're going to see maybe quite often, actually.
Yeah, if you're coming out of a timeout on the road, against Missouri or whatever, and you're up 5. Hopefully, we're up by more than 5 against Missouri. I shouldn't have said that.
Don't speak that into existence.
You're on the road against Auburn, and you're up 5. With like a minute and a half to go, and you kind of at that point in the game, you're just counting stops. You're like, if we can get 2 more stops, statistically the odds of us winning go from like, I don't know, they're probably around 60% right now. They go up to like 92, 93 if we can get 2 more stops. So at that point, you got to not totally throw offense out the window, but you got to be kind of a little bit more laser focused on defense. But that lineup can score too. But yeah, 100%. I think situationally, you would definitely see that. And again, that lineup can score too. Like that lineup's pretty dynamic offensively, especially with Oweh on the wing and Colin Chandler and stuff. So yeah, I think we would see that lineup at least play some part of the minutes, especially in close games.
Is it a hot take to say in my next question to you, best end of game lineup, that is the 5?
That's so hard. That's so hard because it really depends on what you need at the time. And like, if it's free throw shooting, if it's, we need a big shot, if it's, we're only up 1. So yeah, we need stops, but we also need a little bit more of a cushion. We're not up 5. We're only up 1. That's really tough. Who do I trust the most on the court? Like if we just left it at that, who do I trust the most? It'd be Jalen Lowe. It'd be Oweh. It'd be Mo Diabate for sure. It'd probably be Aberdeen. And then it'd probably have to be JQ. So at that point, I'm just projecting my starting lineup probably to be on the court. If we're a little bit worried about JQ, then, you can always shift, maybe a Yelovich in there who I think is going to be pretty smooth with the ball. I think he's going to be pretty good. You can move Modi to the 5. You can do some things like that. But I think that core 4 of like that more veteran group of Lowe, Oweh, Diabate, and Aberdeen are the 4 that I would probably trust the most on the court in any situation late in the game.
Yeah, that one's tough because I do think I think Mo has to be on the floor. I trust Aberdeen. You kind of just feel yourself trusting the guys that have been to Final Fours and have made impacts in Final Four games, won championships. So I feel like you got to go with those guys alongside Jalen Lowe. Just knowing what we know, what we've heard coming out of the summer, I just don't know how you can take him off the floor. Otega Oweh is Otega Oweh, and I just believe in Jaden Quaintance. I just think that he's going to be a star. I really do think that when he gets healthy, I think the bigger question is what's your pre-Jaden Quaintance lineup? What does that look like until he's healthy? And you got to win, your lineup to beat Louisville on November 11th.
Oh yeah. We're going to beat Louisville when we beat Louisville on November 11th.
Good answer.
I think BG probably has to be in there because also at the end of the game, you really do. I don't love the idea of Mo at the 5 because I just think you give up some rebounding and you give up some second chance looks. And I think a lot of what gets drawn up at the end of games, and literally coaches will say in the huddle, like, hey, we're going to draw this up for Oweh, for instance, getting downhill, just get it up on the rim. Obviously try to make it, right? But get it up on the rim. So what you're trying to do as a defender late in games, you're trying to keep the ball off of the rim as best you can. Like you want to try to, obviously if you can get a block, great. But if you can adjust, if you can alter that shot just enough to where it's not kind of getting a little bit of altitude, it's dipping off the rim, and all of a sudden there's room for tip-ins and stuff. Like EJ Montgomery against Florida back in 2018. I think Keon Brooks, that's 100% what Cal told him. He was like, Keon, we're going to throw you the ball here. Make a move, do whatever, make a quick decision, get it up on the rim. And then I guarantee you, he said, EJ and all them fly in there and go for tips and stuff. Like at the end of the games, that's what you need. I think BG is still probably the best one to alter a shot to, if the ball gets up there to maybe get his fingers on it. If it's falling off the rim, to maybe be able to tip it out. I think he did that a couple times, just some stuff like that. So I would probably put BG in there, but who knows? We'll see what the fall brings.
We will see what the fall brings. Very excited for it. Just it feels good to know that you have a good basketball team and you could kind of talk hypotheticals and fun kind of goofy stuff, because if there were real concerns, if we did kind of leave the summer and they were like, dude, Jalen Lowe stinks. You hear stuff like that. How you couldn't put lipstick on that pick. It's just your point guard sucks. What's the fallout from that? So to have such a, comfortable product as things stand, assuming we get the, front court situated, I think this team's going to be awesome, and I really am looking forward to them getting back on campus and getting the, little 38-second highlight clips that we've been getting of them until the real stuff here later on. So kind of transition out of that, and then just because we went so long on that stuff and it was worthwhile. So we'll go quickly through some of these other just kind of hot button weekly topics that have popped up organically. What did you think of Mitch Barnhart opening the door to a Kentucky basketball game at Kroger Field? Is that something that you would do? Would you trust the weather to hold off? Would you trust, like we've seen the, humidity mess up on some, the games on ships and random outdoor locations, recruiting events, the Elite 24, I remember got just shut down. Was it last year, 2 years ago, that they had to bring it inside and the event got canceled eventually? Just, we've seen craziness happen with outdoor courts. Do you trust it at Kroger Field?
I don't. No, I don't trust it one bit. I don't know why you would do that. If you did do it, I would want it to be against some no-name school. Like Sean always says, like, it's never too early to start counting quad one wins. I would not want to put a quad one win on the table in an environment like Kroger Field where who the heck knows what's going to happen. Maybe the winds are strong that day. And so, everybody's there, it's just like, come on. No, I'm not a big fan of that. No disrespect to Mitch Barnhart, but I would not want that if I was there.
Yeah, you got to find ways to make money. That would be a way to make money, but let's do it with concerts. Let's do it with events. Let's do it with, fan gatherings and things like that. Like, I feel like there are.
I would do Big Blue Madness there. I'd be fine with that. Like,
great idea. Yeah.
Kitschy event, I'd be fine with something like that. Don't put one of our 40 regular season basketball games in Kroger Field, please. Could you hear an argument for a paid Big Blue Madness for rev share, for NIL, for financial reasons, the way we kind of got, with the blue-white game last year to a smaller scale? Could you trust hey, we got to raise some real money, let's host Big Blue Madness, and it's a real practice or some, I don't know even what the argument would be, but would that be an avenue? I would not. No, I think Kentucky fans give enough. I think that they give everything that they have. And I think the events that are historically free, I think should continue to be. I was not a fan personally of blue-white shifting to what it shifted to last year. It's just my opinion. But I just think that these fans give a lot of like sweat and tears, and like they give a lot of their heart, and they give a lot of their hard-earned money just to make it to one game. And then they save up. I think about that coal mining picture of that coal miner who got off the shift, brought his like 8-year-old kid. And I just love that. That's what makes Kentucky basketball special, is that it's for everybody in the state. Don't turn into like an airline where every time you round a corner, you're trying to be sold something. And, if you want to participate in this, you got to pay. I'm not a fan of it. Keep it free. Keep it for everybody. What
about this? Big Blue Madness on ice.
On ice.
Disney on ice. But instead, it's your favorite Kentucky Wildcats.
Listen, if Mark Pope came out and it turns out he's like a world-class like ice skater, nothing would surprise me, because it seems like Mark Pope is great at everything. But
who would be the best ice skater on the team?
Oh, God. I don't know, to be honest. Jalen Lowe seems like, I feel like to be a good ice skater, you got to be kind of light on your feet. You got to be pretty nimble and mobile. So I'd give it to Jalen Lowe, yeah.
I like that. All right, moving on. The official schedule is finalized. We get the full 31-game product. Nichols, Valpo, and Eastern Illinois added to the front end of that schedule. Starts with Nichols, Valpo, then we get the Louisville game, followed by Eastern Illinois, and then all the other good stuff that we've seen with the non-conference. Any big takeaways? What did you think of the 3 new additions, and then just kind of the overall big picture finalized schedule?
Yeah, big fan. I knew we needed to squeeze 2 games in before Louisville. You needed to get a Tuesday game or a Wednesday game that opening week, and then you needed to do a Friday or a Saturday game. I was thinking ideally Friday, because I would love the extra prep before Louisville. I think that game is on a Saturday, and Jack, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But I would have loved an extra day of prep, given that it's so early in the year. But I think it landed on Saturday. But you needed to get 2 in, and so you're going to have the 2 exhibitions.
You said the Valpo game?
Yeah, is Valpo the second one?
Right.
Yeah.
No, it starts. Scroll up a little bit, Steven. Yeah,
Yeah.
the Nichols. Yeah, Tuesday, Friday, Tuesday.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Friday. So that's good. For some reason, I was thinking it netted out on a Saturday. Friday is what I was hoping for, just because I wanted that extra day of prep going into Louisville. I didn't want to go into Louisville with just 2 days of prep. I would want to give them Saturday off, maybe a film session, something like that, and then really kind of dive into it Sunday, Monday, and then Tuesday. You've got another day of being able to prep and watch film and stuff. Obviously, it's such a big game. That's what I would probably want. So big fan. I love the out of conference schedule. I think it's good. It's balanced. You got some big names. I would have liked one more road game. I think I like the idea of playing another road. I like the idea of 2 road games in the non-conference that are somewhat marquee or somewhat whatever, or maybe a neutral where you feel like, we're going to go through some stuff. Not maybe Gonzaga and Nashville, although I think that game's going to be great too. But no, I love the additions. I think the schedule's laid out really good. I think it's just a travesty that Louisville is on a Tuesday in November. I just think that's terrible. And for the love of all that is holy, put it on a Saturday in December and have Kentucky wear blue. Have Louisville wear red. Like, somebody just send that to Mitch Barnhart and let's just get that done. That's such a no-brainer, right?
Yeah, it sucks, man. And I feel like neither side has really claimed, held themselves accountable for it. I think, you asked Mark Pope and he, joked, well, blame Louisville for it. But it's also just kind of the circumstance how the cookie crumbled this year. And heard the same thing from Pat Kelsey. He kind of said, it's just had the way things worked out. We would obviously love it to be a Christmas event. Now it's a post-Halloween event, pre-Thanksgiving. It just doesn't feel right. It's going to be weird, but what is the positive? It's you get that right side by side with the Champions Classic, and it kind of turns that beginning stretch of college basketball into, the casual sports fan just totally tunes out the beginning of the college basketball schedule. It isn't until January on, when we get into league play, that it actually matters to them. It gives them a reason to care before Christmas. So I think that's just kind of a surface level, kind of lukewarm take, but all of us would rather it be in December, and it just kind of is what it is. But I do think it's a fun schedule. I really think it's funny having Louisville fans, saying that our non-conference schedule is weak when they exist in the ACC, and we actually have a, hard-fought, every single night is going to be a war in the SEC. It's not going to be the same war it was last year, but still going to be infinitely better than the ACC. So I just think it's kind of funny how they're taking their lumps because they turned into an 8 seed because of their absolute hot garbage of a schedule last season. So it's been funny hearing the chatter.
I did not know that Louisville fans were saying that, and that's a terrible take. I mean, that's
horrible take.
But what else do you expect from that?
Yeah, a bunch of I joked with the full conference. I tweeted something like, you guys seeing 31 wins like me? And a couple of them quote tweeted and was like, this is the schedule that they're talking about. And while they're talking trash about our schedule, it's like, until you grow up, you don't belong to the big kids table. If we're speaking on the Thanksgiving tropes, conversations, you don't belong in the big kids table yet until your schedule reflects that. So congrats on improving your non-conference slightly, but you still play in the ACC, and therefore you don't belong in this conversation. Rick Pitino belongs in this conversation because he says all is forgiven with the Louisville Cardinals. He said, I'd go back in a New York minute. Also talked about coaching against Mark Pope, said it'll be no different than coaching against your son. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. For me, with Pitino in Kentucky, all was forgiven for me. I think, enough time is healed. I think Pitino, I have no knowledge of this, but because it's not like I know Pitino personally, but I think Pitino's a guy who he has qualms. I'm not going to call them grudges, but he has qualms with individual people, maybe not necessarily programs overall. And I think a lot of the people that had bad blood, with him or whatever at Louisville are not maybe there anymore. I think there's been a big changing of the guard in the last, I don't know how many years it's been. Maybe it's been 6 years, I think, or 7 or whatever it's been. Yeah. So I think time heals all. So yeah, I have no problem with him saying that. I never want him to talk about Louisville anyway, like he talks about Kentucky. If there's any Camelot talk or, that the 2013 team was his favorite team or whatever, like I'm gonna have some issues with some of that stuff. But no, I have no issue with him saying that. I think it's probably a good thing, to kind of heal and everything. And I think the state of Kentucky overall, Louisville, Kentucky, both basketball is better. Also, when Rick Pitino is somewhat involved because he's a draw, he brings attention and stuff, which is good. So I have no problem with that. Yeah, I think him and Mark Pope are super, super close, which I love. So them coaching against each other, I think will be super fun. I think it's going to be really emotional for both. Jack, I think you talked about that last week about the emotion that's going to go into that game. But don't get it twisted. Like Patino is like as cutthroat as it gets in this industry. So he's going to be going as soon as the ball goes up. He's going to be going for Mark's throat. He's gonna want to definitely try to beat us as badly as possible. And I think Mark's going to do the same. So it should be a fun one. But I think I have no problem with Patino saying what he said about Louisville. Is
that the game that we bring back the denim?
Yeah, the only downside is that I don't want to wait that long to see them, but that would be killer. I would love for that to be the game. And then I hope that we actually wear them a few more times throughout the year. I hope that we have some games mapped out where we want to do it as well, but that would make the most sense.
Yeah, I feel like with this new Nike agreement and kind of extending that and having apparel be a big part of that agreement, like I feel like there really isn't any excuse not to have just the constant rotation of the icicles and like just go through all of the historic jerseys, no matter how ugly they're seen or deemed and the prettiest jerseys of all time. Wear the Nike Elite ones from 2012 against Tennessee, like wear all of them because you're Nike and you can. Like I feel like this program deserves to be kind of the Oregon of basketball, the way they do with football, just rolling out different things every week. I think we could be doing that and should be doing that. So hopefully maybe this new Nike contract allows us to get a little bit more creative. I know Mark Pope would definitely like that, but definitely excited for those denims. Whatever you think of them, it's history, and I really think it's going to be a cool thing to just see that kind of brought back to life.
Yeah, and I mean, Kentucky fans eat that stuff up more than any fan base in the world. I mean, I don't know any, definitely in college basketball, no fan base cares about that type of stuff more. And I'm waiting to see we shouted out Gerald Fitch earlier, those jerseys from that era, that Tayshaun and Keith Bogans and Fitch and them.
Beautiful.
Those are just the best. I mean, those are just unbelievable. And I don't see as much chatter about bringing those back, but me, and maybe it's nostalgia because of my age and stuff, but I'm like, those are the best in my mind. I would love to see them. So yeah, hopefully this new Nike stuff brings a bunch of fun stuff because that makes it more fun for us. And more important than anything, I think Pope is super open for it. And I think he pushes for it, which is great.
Well, and they started with the 93s. Like you call your shot with a certain era of uniform, but then you don't expand. Like I feel like if you're going to open up the door, you're going to crack the door, just swing it open and go all in. Like I feel like that's the only, you cater to every era of Kentucky basketball, not that one very specific era, especially when your head coach is Mark Pope. Like at least got to lean into the 96 stuff. So anyway, I think this is going to be the year for the 30th anniversary. It's a layup, and I think Kentucky knows that. I know the jerseys exist. It's more of the when, not if, and I think it's going to be that St. John's game. So Spencer, man, this was an absolute blast. I love this, and love getting you back on. Love that we can make this a regular thing. So I know last time you said you don't really have a place for fans to find your work, but has that changed? Do you want them to look at you anywhere?
No, I mean, you can find me on Twitter. I think what is my thing on Twitter? I think I'm Spencer_Smith10. You can certainly find me there. It's not probably going to be worth your time. I don't put out really any Kentucky content or anything.
Just get his followers up. He deserves them. He's great at what he does. You deserve a nice little run of followers.
Hey, I appreciate that. I'm trying to remember what Sean's is. Sean's is _S Smith. I'm not going to try to do it, but follow Sean Smith. No, he's not here. I'll still plug his Twitter for him. Find
me on Twitter at Jack Pilgrim KSR. Go subscribe to KSR Plus. All the intel, everything that you hear on this show comes first on KSR Plus. So go make sure you go subscribe there and subscribe right here on the KSR YouTube channel. We love doing stuff like this: football, basketball, recruiting. Jacob's done a great job with Here Comes the Boom. So hey. That's what we're here for, and it's cool to wrap up the summer, put a bow on that, and kind of move our attention toward what should be a very fun fall here in Lexington. So for Jack, for Spencer, and hopefully Sean's getting ready for a big first day of school tomorrow, yet another year in high school for one Sean Smith. So hopefully things go well for him. And with that, let's wrap this thing up. Go Cats.